When you go back for a second round of a game, can you really recapture what it felt like the first time? Squid Game 2. I have now seen the entirety of this second season, and I want to give my thoughts on it. It is worth noting that this isn't really a second. This is half of a second season. Seasons 2 and 3 were filmed back to back, and season 3 is intended to be the final season. And this ends definitely before it's done telling its story. So this isn't a complete product the way season 1 was a complete product. Seasons 2 and 3 will probably consider kind of a complete thing. But so I can't really judge on where it's ultimately going and whether or not it'll go more interesting places in the third season. It might, but season 2 is about as good as it was going to be given the nature of what it is. And yeah, let's unpack that sentence a little bit. So the core problem that this has is the core problem that nearly all first sequels to really strong high concept successes have, which is, okay, what people really remember and really loved about this was this really neat core idea we had. We can't not do it again. We have to do it a second time because that's what people came for before and it's what they're expecting now. How do we do that without just making it feel like a retread? And it is a hurdle that I've not ever seen anything clear. This is the problem that haunts things like the initial sequels to The Hunger Game, Cube, The Platform, Battle Royale. And there just isn't a way to do the core idea again, which is what these things are doing, without it feeling repetitive, redundant, and like we've kind of already been here. Now, some of these franchises would have later installments after that initial first sequel that would do more interesting things. And I have a little bit of hope for season 3 on that front, but I'll talk more about that when we get a little bit more into spoilers. But it's a really difficult thing when you're trying to move the narrative forward, which this is trying to do. Like, you can kind of get away with it if you're, I don't know, The Purge. Because like The Purge is a franchise that basically sells itself on premise and almost not at all on plot. You can like those movies and you can think some of them even have good stories, but like the series continues because it's like, here's that premise again. And while it has some things on its mind, it's not trying to make grander thematic points or anything like that. So it doesn't feel the need to evolve the narrative that much in any given installment. And that's fine. It can get away with that. When things have more on their mind and are trying to say and do more than that, which Squid Game is, that's where the repetitive nature kind of just kneecaps it a bit. Now, like I said, this is about as good as it's going to get given that inherent stumbling block, because there is a lot of repeated notes, because we have our lead character Ji-hoon from the first one, and what names I remember I am probably going to butcher, and I apologize, but having him re-enter the games again, and I don't consider that a spoiler, it was in the trailers, and then we go through the games again, even though most of the games themselves that we see get played are not the same games as last time. And even though we don't really have any of the new characters who are a one-to-one comparison to characters from the previous season, there are ones filling a similar role in terms of, character you're meant to sympathize with, clear antagonist, coward, or there are similar archetypes at play, but the specifics are different enough that it doesn't feel like they just stamped out new characters out of the exact same mold as last time. So all of that helps, but that doesn't fully overcome the fact that we've been here before, even as the show itself is even trying to evolve its theming and its points a little bit, as it sort of taking the next evolution and the natural progression of that first show's core criticism of capitalism in and of itself. This is exploring some of the new venues in which capitalism infects society and people. It shows the impact of capitalism on democracy in a pretty direct way. And so it is taking the ideas further, but it's still dealing with the same core ideas and exploring them through the same core narrative. And it's just never going to hit as hard as the first time. Because like a huge impact of the first season of Squid Game was me seeing how hard they were going to go at the anti-capitalism and the whole capitalism criticism that thing was. It committed to that to a degree I was not prepared for. And that was a big part of my core joy with that season. And this can't do that again. It cannot surprise me with how far it takes it. It can surprise me a little with like some of the directions and some of the specifics, but it can't surprise me with its commitment to the bit. I expect it now. So this, for me at least, was always going to be lesser just by the core nature of what it is. Now, as I said, I have some hope for the third season because where things are left off, enough has happened that there is the potential, I don't know if it'll happen, but there is the potential for the third season to have a fundamentally different structure from just, and you keep playing the games. It may or may not take advantage of that, but I think it has the opportunity to do it, and I'm kind of hoping it will, which will put it in the range of being able to, okay, we've given you the thing again, so we can still do it. Now let's do more. Let's do something else. Let's stretch it out in a different direction. And maybe that'll happen with season 3. I have a little bit of hope, and that hope may either be affirmed or dashed by the time we get a proper trailer for season 3. We'll see. But I've focused a lot on like the internal games because that is the main draw. There is other stuff going on. We actually get a more extended look at some of the people who are behind the games, including sort of following around one of just the basic soldiers, with the shape masks. And that's not uninteresting, but it doesn't add all that much more depth to it. It adds a little. It gives us a little more perspective on how this organization that runs these games fills out its rank and file, which we had small glimpses of in the first season. We get a little bit more of that here. And that's not uninteresting. What is uninteresting, and again, I don't even really consider this to be a spoiler, because like this is stuff going on at the very beginning. Like the first 2 episodes are dedicated to Ji-hoon trying to find the front man, trying to figure out how to dismantle these games. Well, actually, he's trying to find the front man later on, but initially he's just trying to find the guy who found him on the subway and made him play that game where every time he lost, the guy smacked him. And that first episode, I think, by far was the strongest episode of this season because it showed the continuation of the critique of capitalism and the cruelty of the people with the most power. Like, okay, this does get a little bit spoilery. Okay, overall, if you saw the first season and liked it, this is worth checking out. It's not as good. I am now going to get into some more specifics that are probably a bit more spoilery, or at least are so specific that you wouldn't have seen this in the trailers. Okay, we're moving forward now. So you have that guy, and he does this new thing where he buys all this food and all these lottery tickets, and he's going up to homeless people in the park and giving them the option, pick one, offering food or lottery tickets. And most of them take the lottery ticket, which is a very human thing to do. And he then proceeds to throw the remaining food, which is most of it, onto the ground and stamp on it, telling them, you made your choice, you chose not to have this. But of course, the thing is, there's nothing stopping him from giving them the food anyway. It is the cruelty is part of the point, because you can see him get exasperated in an excited way at getting to destroy this food in front of them. He takes glee in that. And he did not have to do it. He wanted to. And he uses the excuse of, I gave you the chance to help yourself and you didn't, so this is your own fault. No, it's not. It's your fault. It's a manufactured situation you created so that you could be cruel and justify that cruelty. And you knew that most of the people were going to take that lottery ticket because of the way that capitalism conditions us and gambling conditions us to think, maybe I can win. Maybe I can be one of the lucky few who gets the golden ticket and pulls themselves out of the ditch. But we don't. We don't and we can't. But you tempt us with that and then punish us for failing, even though it was rigged. And it's worth noting, out of those 100 lottery tickets, none of them won. I think we only see one guy take the food. So 99 tickets, not a single one of them was a winner in any amount. Now, did this guy know that? No, but statistically, that was in his favor anyway. That first episode felt really good, and it felt like a good pulling of the same themes and giving us a different side rather than just throwing us back into the games. But then, of course, by episode 3, we are thrown back into the games, and the opportunity to give us more stuff like that of extrapolating the lessons of the games and showing more of the continued application outside of the specifics of the games themselves is something I really would have liked to have seen more of. But we only really got it in episode 1. Now, I did say that there was some stuff that isn't interesting, and that is the hunt. I cannot remember the policeman's name, the one whose brother is the front man and who got shot at the end of the first season, and he got rescued by a fisherman. And apparently he's been trying to find the island ever since, and he finds Ji-hoon, and they try and start working together to find this thing and close it down and dismantle it and everything else. And every episode, we cut back to these guys on a boat looking for the island. It's boring as hell. It's so boring. And I don't know how you fix that. I don't know how you spice that up, because I don't know what else there is to do in the narrative with these guys. But watching them continue to fail to find a place is what the story needs to be happening with them, because they can't find it too soon and they can't just sit around and not be looking. But also, that's really boring. That's really boring. It's not the actor's fault. It's not that the characters are boring. It's that's just a boring notion. Also, it feels the most clunkily written, because the instant that one guy who was the left hand of the loan shark, I did like the detail that the loan shark was working for Ji-hoon. When we started, the loan shark who was threatening his life at the start of the first season, I kind of liked how that panned out. That was interesting. Then of course he dies. But again, in a really good scene with the Russian roulette and that one frickin' that recruiter. Oh, he was really good. Really well used too. And I'm not even going to bemoan the fact that he dies after the first episode, because I'm not sure. I think it would have been diminishing returns to keep going back to him, but boy, was he well used. That first episode's a banger, man. It's real good. And then it's kind of a decline after that. Not a drop off a cliff, but it is a decline. But anyways, the instant that lieutenant of the loan shark, mentions to the captain, Ji-hoon's name, is oh, you kind of already know, so I can just tell you this. I'm the captain's in on it. He has to be. You wouldn't be showing me the scene otherwise. And then, yes, it turns out he is. And it's not surprising. It's not shocking. And I'm just waiting for it to happen. Okay. What's even the point? because like I guess on the one hand, he was being used to give the police detective false hope, because the police detective was like using him and going out on his own. This was before he even found Ji-hoon, and he's going out with him and they're looking for the island, and this guy can help ensure that he never finds it. But like on the other hand, if this was the guy who picked him up out of the water in the first place, if he was always with the island, why didn't he just kill him? I don't know. It's like I don't actually care enough to even get that upset about that as a plot hole. It's like, boring. That stuff was boring. I haven't talked too much about the specifics of the characters, and I don't know if I have that much to say. I do like, I wasn't sure how I felt for a while about the idea that the front man implants himself into the games to sort of work it from within and get close to Ji-hoon. A part of me going like, why would you even do that? But like, there's this tiny little smirk that he does when, in that last episode, when Ji-hoon's like, we have to be prepared to let a certain amount of people die for us to have a chance at overthrowing this whole thing. And his whole thing up to that point is, I want to try and get everybody out, but at this point, like, that's clearly not going to happen. And once he admits, like, having a willingness to sacrifice a certain amount of people, the front man just gets the tiniest little grin. I'm like, that's why he's here. That's why he's doing this. He wanted to, like, be there in the trenches and to know that Ji-hoon was willing to have people die, quote unquote, for the greater good. Now, of course, this guy is probably doing a massive false equivalency with what he does with running these games as being sacrifices for, quote unquote, the greater good, versus what Ji-hoon was trying to accomplish. He's probably doing a massive false equivalency with the two, but to see that little smirk, like, said a lot to me about him and his place in all this, and I liked that. So ultimately, I ended up liking him a fair bit. Thanos as an antagonistic force, I got real bored with real quick. Like, he was effective for what he was, but I'm like, okay, can somebody take this guy out already? And somebody did eventually. Cool. Works for me. Kind of have a similar feeling with like the old guy who's largely the rallying point for like one more game. I'm like, this guy's never going to want to stop, and obviously he wasn't. He's effective for it, and he's a little bit different from the kinds of characters who are pushing that. I do like the addition of the vote after every game, and that's what I was talking about when I said the show is in this season is examining the impact of capitalism on democracy. So like, that's an interesting evolution. It's not enough to overcome the fundamental repetition of the thing, but I've talked about that already. Some folks might be wondering why I haven't talked about the trans character. And that is because I'm going to talk about it on Saturday on the main channel, because I kind of want to go off on that. Here's what I'll say here. The character is well written, well intentioned, and well performed. I still have a massive, massive problem with this, and I will explain that in another video, because I have too many and too volatile a thought on that to just tack it on at the end of this. So thoughts for that are coming. But I think that's where I'm going to leave it. It teased me with a really good first episode, and then became exactly what I figured it was going to be, based on the trailer, with exactly the issues that I figured I was going to have. And that doesn't make it bad, but like, it lacked the ability to surprise me the way that the first season did semi-regularly. So, oh well. Maybe the third season will pick it up, because like I said, that first episode alone shows that this thing is not, it's not like this is not a soulless cash in. It is trying to evolve the ideas. It is trying to evolve the themes. It in that first episode does some really good stuff along those lines. So like, this isn't just they're doing it again for the money. There is intent to do more with it, and I hope they could maybe tie it together in the third season. I don't know. We'll see. Squid Game 2! What did you think about it? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments and let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills and enables me to do this as my living, even if you can't help me out that way. Like, share, subscribe. They all help me out. Don't worry too much about it, though. Take a relaxed attitude around here so you can just come on back next time you need a break. And now to thank my highest supporting patrons. Robin Moore, Goddess Elida, Zubin Lotfulla, Welsh Wrestling Geeks, Alistair McPherson, Oliver B., Melissa Pedersen, Movie Turtle, Ulrich Bogdan, Loki Eris, Melinda Walters, Auntie Kate 808, Becky Sparks, Fernabi Likes the Poodle, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Casperl, Dave Hall, White Bearish, Rosalind Bennett, Adam RDL Taylor, Pal Barabajoggle, Mira G, and Sir Didymus is my favorite. If you'd like me to... I read the names fine, then screwed it up. If you would like to hear me try and say your name while these guys chitter in my ears, check out the rewards on my Patreon. Yeah, you're not distracting at all.